So good evening, everyone. Thank you for being on this call. And as a series, we are doing, of course, this group session is about deep diving into the tangents of faith, the things that we don't necessarily talk about in day to day or even at a regular church meets. This forum is to establish us further in the Word of God, but also to relate our faith into the world out there that we interact with on a daily basis. The series that we are currently covering, that is being, of course, led by Dr. Panicker, is Christianity and Science, and modern science especially. Very briefly, I want to introduce Dr. Panicker to those that might not have been able to attend the last session. Dr. Panicker, he holds a PhD and a master's in aerospace engineering from the University of Texas, Arlington. This is after a BE in electronics engineering from Bangalore University. He also volunteers with Education Revolution, which is a movement aimed at empowering the church to lead in providing Christian education from K-12, grade 12, through higher education. Originally from Kerala, India, he currently resides in Dubai, UAE, with his wife, Dr. Rafila, a mechanical engineer. Together, they actively participate in homeschooling their 3 children. So the last session with him, we were able to cover a lot of basics of how did science come about, what is science, and how do you validate in terms of like Christianity and science. What do you see the basic connects, the basic connectivity going on? And based on that, there was a lot of questions that came up in the group, a lot of discussion that was happening in the group. So the part 2 today is hoping to cover those questions. It aims to help us go into the depths of what is the Christian worldview, and does it promote or does it impede the growth of science? And in the talk today, he will cover the basics of the understandings that we already have, but he will also go into the deeper realms of the views and the different ways that we end up talking about Christianity and science. So he will cover epistemology. He will also talk about how the morals for science, the truth, the academic freedom, and all of that is based off Christian principles. And then he will also get further into the eschatological perspectives and the impact of those perspectives and the different views that do exist, and how these are can be balanced in terms of what we know about science as of now. So Dr. Panicker, thank you for doing this again with us, and thank you for taking us, especially for those that are facing these on a day-to-day basis, either in their lives or in their workspaces. Over to you now.
Thank you very much, Christina. Thank you for that introduction. And thank you to Dr. Latha and her team, including Janet and others who have worked behind the scenes to make this possible. And thanks to all of you for attending this talk. And thanks for your the questions that some of you have sent over. And I hope that you will also participate in the discussions at the end. So without much further ado, let me try and share my screen. All right, is the screen big enough, or do you need any adjustments?
I think that's good enough, Dr.
Okay, good. Yeah, I'm at my friend's place. I had to travel, and so I don't have my usual monitor here. I'm on my laptop, so I hope it works well. So, well, thanks for this opportunity again. And this is the second session on the topic of Christianity and modern science. The subtopic, does the Christian worldview promote or impede the growth of science? Is what we want to answer. So in addition, I'll go over what we're going to talk about soon. We will do a quick recap of session 1, and then we will go into teleology for science, the purpose of science, and from a Christian perspective. So this talk is going to deal with philosophy and history. So we're not critiquing scientific evidence in this talk. We will critique scientific evidence from a philosophical perspective, the philosophy of science, as well as we'll look at it from history. So Christian teleology will be the purpose of science from Christian perspective, and that includes the stewardship mandate from Genesis 1, and then the concept of reversing the curse. So we'll go into that also. And then the Great Commission, which is familiar to all of us. We'll look at why, from a teleological perspective, why there are more Nobel Prize winners who are Christians than any other, from any other religion. And then we'll look at why paganism prohibits or inhibits scientific thinking. And this is why, for example, Jawaharlal Nehru, the first Prime Minister of India, had to specifically talk about the scientific temper, the necessity for a scientific temper and to forego superstition and backward thinking. And what he didn't know, what he maybe didn't talk about, that is Nehru, is that the mindset for a scientific temper came from Christianity, and it's not a secular thinking. And Nehru was a secularized person, but he was a proponent of what we call today secular humanism. And secular humanism is Christianity without its roots, without its faith in God and Jesus Christ. And so he was trying to propound that secularized thinking, which is just Christianity without its roots. So we'll talk about that also. And if we have time, we'll look into how Christianity created the language and the ecosystem for science, and specifically the university and academia, and also the worldview that is part of that. We'll also look at Christian ethics. And throughout all of this, I want to make a strong call for Christians to take back the scientific arena. Christians, especially young ones, should enter the scientific field and take it back for the Lord, for these purposes, for the stewardship, for reversing the curse, and for the Great Commission. Okay, so let's go launch right into it. Now, here's a recap of session 1. We looked at the scientific method and how to create a scientific theory. We looked at concepts such as rationalism, empiricism, and deduction and induction. We looked at what a worldview is, and so on. So let's just briefly look through that. And then at the end, we try to answer these questions. Are Christianity and science mutually exclusive? The strong answer is no. Christianity created science, modern science. And what other religions and atheism created are not not what we call today modern science. So the question, does science contradict the Bible? The answer is yes, it does, because science has to be contradicted. And that is the way science progresses. And so, yes, it is a subjective perspective. And so Christianity or the Bible does contradict the Bible, and that is natural. Does Christian worldview promote or impede the growth of science? Overwhelmingly, it is Christianity that has promoted the science, the growth of science. So we'll look into that also. Now, we looked at what the scientific method is, what they call today the scientific method, which did not exist before Christianity invented it. That is, Christians invented the concept of the systematic process for investigating phenomena. Now, even the systematization came from Christian thinkers, such as, for example, Thomas Aquinas, who wrote Summa Theologica, that is the summation of the theology. And that is a very systematic look at theology. And he wrote several books, including that Summa Theologia, where he introduced the concept of systematically dissecting the subject and putting it together systematically, in various categories and various steps. And that, again, it's a Christian idea, Christian concept of creating a systematic process for investigation. And then we looked at the empiricism, the scientific method includes both empiricism and rationalism, that is empirical and reason. And it is built on the concept of truth, and it's built on the concept that man, being made in God's image, is able to know truth and is able to investigate and to seek and to find truth. Other religions did not teach that, and that's why they had a very stunted growth of technology. They had technologies, but they could not develop it into what we today call science. And then we looked at rationalism versus empiricism. Rationalism is where the idea that knowledge comes from reason and logic and not the senses, whereas empiricism is the idea that knowledge comes from experience through the senses and not mainly through the reason. And so Christianity takes both of them and qualifies both reason and empiricism. Your senses and reason are qualified because they're made by God. And so Christianity offers a different perspective. And then we use both deductive and inductive logic. Now, then we looked at the method of creating a scientific theory, and that it includes the concepts such as testability, reproducibility, repeatability, and falsifiability. Falsification is very important. This is a relatively newer thing that came in the 20th century with Karl Popper, who was a mathematician. He was an atheist. But the others were invented by Christians, such as Isaac Newton and Francis Bacon and so on. Now, even the concept of falsifiability existed prior to Karl Popper putting it down in those words. Then the scientific theory must have predictive power. It must be simple, and that comes from Occam's razor, which is also derived from the characteristic of God. God has simplicity. So this is a Christian concept that God is has a simple character, and so God's character extends into all of his creation. And so Occam's razor, Occam was a priest in the 1100s or just prior, in the 1100s AD. And so he propounded that if you have an explanation for a phenomena, the simplest one should be the right one, will be the right one. And then the scope for scientific theory should be applied. I mean, your theory should be applicable for explaining a wide range of phenomena. Okay, so then we looked at how the major pioneers of the scientific method or science were all Christians, including Francis Bacon, Galileo, Isaac Newton, Robert Boyle, René Descartes, and Johann Kepler, Blaise Pascal, William Harvey, Christian Huygens, who wrote, who created the wave theory of light, and then others such as Leeuwenhoek and so on. But these are just just a few pioneers. But if you look throughout your textbooks in science, you will find various pioneers who are all Christian. But our textbooks do not talk about their religious side. They just the textbooks just deal with their scientific work, and they don't explain how they came to science or to study science, what drove them, what motivated them to study science, and what drove them and helped them to discover the scientific concepts that they were working on. And that was concepts derived from the Bible, which is a Christian worldview, that is Christian epistemology and ontology and the ethical principles. So these are the branches of philosophy that we looked at last time. And the first three are the most commonly known. that is metaphysics or ontology, that talks about reality, the status, the state of reality. And epistemology is the study of knowledge. And then ethics, of course, is the study of moral values and principles. So Christianity has comprehensive view about all of this. Now, every other religion and atheism, which is also religion, also professes their own versions of these, right? But Christianity has the only one that is that has a comprehensive view of all of these and a theory about the origin of all of this. And then we looked at also the laws of logic, which originally were framed by Aristotle, and they couldn't do much with it, that is ancient Greeks. And they soon fell into skepticism and hedonism and so on. So that's when Paul meets the Epicureans and the Stoics. They were not able to progress much with the developments that preceded them, such as developments of Plato and Aristotle. And so they were stuck in skepticism, actually. And all right, so let's continue. Now, one of the branches of philosophy was called natural philosophy, and that is what Christianity then developed into modern science. Now, today we'll look at epistemology and ethics. And last time we might have touched on metaphysics or ontology. But when you look into these aspects of philosophy, of science, you'll see that they're interconnected. It's very difficult to separate, for example, ethics from epistemology. They all go together. They work hand in hand, ontology, epistemology, and ethics. Okay, so then we looked at how Isaac Newton wrote this book called The Principles of Natural Philosophy of Mathematics, the mathematical natural philosophy. Okay, so even the word science came from the Bible, and it's Greek for knowledge. And because Europeans were using Greek and Latin because of the Bibles, they adopted these words from the Bible, such as the word for knowledge, which is noseos. And so that became knowledge in English. And then from the Latin word for noseos is scientia, and that is the word from the Latin Bible, and that's the word that we use for science. Okay, and then we looked at worldview, what the definition is, and it has components of epistemology, ontology, ethics, and aesthetics. And as Christians, we are called to develop a Christian and biblical worldview because we are called to transform and renew our thinking and to demolish arguments and take every thought captive, make it obedient to Christ. So let's now look at teleology. Teleology comes from the Greek for telos, which is end or purpose, and logia, which is from the word logos, where such as in John 1:1, in the beginning was the logos. But a small concept of that is the logia, which is the study. And so teleology is the explanation of phenomena in terms of the purpose and the goal. And it is in theology, it is a doctrine of design and purpose in the material world. So everything that we see around us has a purpose, even our lives. We as Christians, we know that our lives have meaning and it has purpose, and God has a purpose for our lives, right? This is something that Christians we know of, and we talk about this and we teach this to our children and to others. Especially when we teach the gospel to others, we say God has a purpose for your life. And so that is teleology. And so we have to discover this. Now, before we get into that, let's talk about atheism or anti-theism. There's two forms that we can see today prevalent, that is Western atheism and Eastern atheism. An example of Western, that should be Eastern, not Easter, but Western atheism is what we call secular humanism or just plain atheism. And an example of Eastern atheism is Buddhism. Buddhism is an offshoot of Eastern mystic religions that is atheistic, right? So they don't believe in a God. Now, why are they different? Why is Eastern atheism different from Western atheism? Well, the answer is that Eastern atheism came out of the mysticism, and it carried the baggage of mysticism. What is that? That is the dharma, the karma, the principle of karma that exists still in Buddhism. And they also have the concept of the soul and the afterlife. And Buddhism has that. So it's you see how atheism just adopts what is around them, right? It doesn't invent anything new. All they do is deny God, and then they just take what's already there and build on that. And so Buddhism is a offshoot of Eastern mysticism, one of which is Hinduism, what we call Hinduism, which is also not one religion. Hinduism is also a concoction of various belief systems. And Western atheism, where did that come out of? It came out of Christianity. So last time we read from Tom Holland, the atheist English historian who discovered that Western civilization, and actually modern civilization, is a product of Christianity. Even though they try to deny it, all their value systems, the good things that in Western civilization or modern civilizations, all the good things are taken from Christianity while denying its Christian roots. So atheism or secular humanism, it adheres to naturalism and materialism. That is, the universe has a naturalistic origin and it is materialistic. That is, there's only matter in the world, and matter is what matters, right? And it rejects an intrinsic purpose or design in natural phenomena. So even evolution, it's just random, right? So there's no direction in the evolution of life or living creatures. It's just random progress, right? I mean, you cannot even use the word progress, right? That denotes purpose, direction. And so atheism they believe in randomness. There's no purpose. And so the universe and life are seen as just natural random processes without inherent teleological direction or purpose. Now, secular humanists and atheists, that is Western atheists, support the scientific method. Why? Because they're stealing from the Christian worldview. The scientific method was invented by the Christian worldview, and because they came out of Christianity, that is Western atheism, they just stole it, and they took it and they said, well, this has always been there. Christians just discovered it, but we can just take it for ourselves. They cannot do that. They cannot explain the origin of the scientific method. And so they're stealing from Christian worldview. And so science, again, which is a Christian product, in the atheistic perspective, they have committed to naturalism and materialism, so they don't assume or require a teleological framework. And atheistic science seeks to explain phenomena through causation and empirical observation. This is what they claim. But then how do you have cause and effect if you cannot explain where it came from, right? How do you have observation or empiricism when you cannot explain why you can trust your senses or your reason? So they are stealing from the Christian worldview. They don't tell you, they don't even know this. A lot of them don't know this. Why? Because they don't learn philosophy, proper philosophy in their universities, and they just assume that they can just take what they have, right? They cannot. They need to explain where they got it from, and they're not able to. Atheists have used science and technology for good. Okay, a lot of atheists are in science and in technologies. They're doing a lot of good things with it. But why are they doing it? Why is it being applied for that purpose? Well, it's a subjective reason. It's a personal reason, right? They don't know that there's a eventual purpose, right? That's an eternal purpose that they can explain. There's nothing like that in atheism, because there is no there is no fundamental purpose for life or existence, because life will eventually die out. The universe will die in a thermodynamic heat death. So what is the meaning or purpose of life anyway? There is no meaning to anything, right? So why do good in the first place? Why would you want to do good or bad? There's no meaning to anything. So atheism cannot explain all of that, but atheists have also used science and technology for much evil, for control and destruction. And so that's why today the secular governments, most governments today are secular, and they are creating the technocratic states. They are all technocracies. They look like democracies. They're not. They are technocracies, rule of technology. And they're using technology to control humanity, to to try and make humanity evolve into a creature that they can control and use for the benefit of the state, the government. And that is an idea that they have borrowed from a person called Friedrich Hegel. Hegel is a German philosopher from the 18th century who taught that the state is God marching through history. And so the purpose of the state is to create this new individual human that is molded in the shape of, in their shape, right? In the shape of the state, in the image of the state. So there is danger. And because we can see that atheism in the form of communism and totalitarian regimes have killed more people than all the religions combined in the last few thousand years. So they have killed, in 1 century alone, they killed about 200 million people in the 20th century alone. And atheism is the most violent religion. And in just 1 century alone, they have managed to kill about 200 million people. This is a conservative estimate. And this is, 20th century has been the most destructive century in the history of mankind. And this is after atheism claims to have taken over with the French Revolution, right? That was in the late 1700s with the French Revolution. And that was when atheism took over the state of France. And then they propounded this, the atheistic state idea model to the rest of the world. And since that, they have killed, there has been nothing but violence and death and misery being caused by atheistic totalitarian regimes. And in 100 years alone, they've killed about 200 million people. This is astounding. This is shocking. And people don't think about this. And we have only begun the 21st century. And look at all the wars being created by secular states. Secular states are creating more wars in this century. And so atheism is the most violent religion by far. So this is not, if you want to read more about this, actually, Dinesh D'Souza has written a book about this. He writes a book about called What is So Good About Christianity? And Dinesh D'Souza, he's writing from a Catholic perspective, but he reviews history and he looks at all the religious wars versus atheistic wars. So this is why Christians have to be salt and light. We have to be in government. Christians have to be in government. You cannot let it be run in a secular way, because secularism is a religion. So you have to be salt and light in government. You have to be salt and light in science. Secular humanism is applied atheism. So it's more than just atheism. It's applied atheism in philosophy and all areas of life. And secular humanism posits that human beings are capable of being ethical and moral without religion. Okay. Now, where does the secular humanism comes from? It is the idea from the Garden of Eden, that what the devil told Adam, you can know right and wrong, good and evil for yourself. And so today, governments, secular governments, are deciding what is right and wrong. Okay, and it has led to nothing but wars and destruction and misery. And so Archbishop of Canterbury, William Temple, in 1943 said that the Christian tradition is in danger of being undermined by a secular humanism which hoped to retain Christian values without Christian faith. So you hear about, all of these things from the governments, like we need to treat people with equality, and they need to have democratic values and so on. But they cannot explain where those came from. Why? Why should we have them? Why is that better than the alternatives, right? They don't know. Well, it's just might makes right, because we are the state, we have the power, and we decide what is right and wrong. And so the US Supreme Court accepted secular humanism as a religion in 1961 in the Torcaso versus Watkins case. And then the US Supreme Court recognized atheism as a religion in the 2005 case, Kaufman versus McCarthy. But guess what? Humanism started out as Christian humanism. Humanism started out as Christian humanism. They didn't call it Christian humanism because everybody was Christian in the 13th century Italy. So this is the beginning of the Renaissance. So the humanism, what is the fundamental concept of humanism? And that is the imago Dei. That is, God created man in his image, so man is special. Man can be creative. Man has rights. Man has duties. And so that gave rise to universal human rights, individual freedom, the dignity of the human being, and so on. These are Christian ideas that came about at the beginning of the Renaissance from Christianity, which we don't have in India. No other religion has derived these concepts of human rights, freedom, dignity, and so on. What do we have in India? We have unequalness, the caste system. We have elitism. We have all kinds of classes created by different pagan ideas. So Christianity has to break those barriers down and bring back the idea of the image of God. And as Christians, remember, there is no Jew nor Greek, no male nor female. It is equality under Christ. That concept has to pervade the church. The church is guilty of elitism and casteism today. The Christian church in India is guilty. And we have to repent and go back to the Bible and bring about equality, because it was always Christianity that brought about equality. Okay, so let's look at the other atheism, which is Buddhism. Buddhism also doesn't have a teleological view. They focus on impermanence and suffering, dukkha, and non-self, anatma, anatta. So the idea of Buddhism is what? Is to be one with the essence of the universe, right? To get rid of the self. And so why is there suffering? Well, because we have wants. So how do you get rid of suffering? Get rid of your wants. Okay, well, do you want freedom for your people from China? In what is that place? Dalai Lama, right? I'm just blanking out of the place name. Somebody can help me out.
Tibet?
Tibet.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah. So how can you claim to want freedom for your people from China? Because then your want is antithetical to Buddhism, right? So he's fighting a lost cause, this Mr. Dalai Lama. And, well, do you want to emancipate your people? Well, that is a want. That's a desire. That is antithetical to Buddhism. So it's an internally conflicted, contradictory, self-contradictory religion. It cannot advance science. And this is why Buddhism did not invent science. They had technologies, they had books, they had printing. They had printing in China 2,000 years ago, Whereas in Europe, they brought printing only, what, 500 years ago with Gutenberg? And look what they did in Christendom with printing in the last 500 years, right? Whereas they had printing in China for 2,000 years, they didn't do anything with it. They printed some books, and then they kept the books in the monasteries and worshipped it. They didn't read it because you have to empty your mind. That is the Eastern meditation, is to empty your mind. Whereas in the Bible, meditation is to think deeply. You see, they are both opposites. It's a different worldview. The Christian worldview goes against the humanistic worldview. It's different in every case. And so Buddhists emphasize interdependence of all phenomena, and they explain that everything arose due to a web of conditions rather than having an intrinsic purpose or goal. But then when Buddha is asked about cosmology, he said, why worry about those things? Don't concern yourself with cosmology and so on. You just care about emptying yourself and getting rid of yourself, right? And so don't concern yourself with that. So they never invented science. They did not progress, and they got easily taken over by Western powers, right? And more than that, the monks practiced celibacy and begging. So that is anti-economy, and it's anti-family. It is a self-destructive religion. And so this is when people say that there's some similarity between Buddhism and Christianity, including Ambedkar, who was the writer of our Constitution. They're just plainly wrong because they don't understand Christianity. Now, whereas let's look at Islam. They have monotheism, and they see that the universe is created by a God who has a purpose and design. But that is limited. It's limited to the judgment day. It's limited. What is the intent of God for creating this existence, this universe? Well, it's a very limited view of the universe. So they had technologies that they inherited from conquest, that they conquered Christian lands and others. And what did they do with that technology? They used it for conquest. They developed some ideas such as the clock and astronomy for finding direction for Mecca and the right time to pray and so on. But beyond that, they imploded. And now they blame the Crusades for having destroyed Islamic science. And they say that Islam invented the science that Europe inherited. No, Islam took over Christian lands, which were advanced for their age. And then they imploded because they do not have a worldview that can sustain science. And what about Hinduism? Well, Hinduism is a monistic religion, just like Buddhism, which means that all existence is just one, and there is no there's no other form of existence. So in Christianity, we have a form of a dual existence. So God is beyond this space and time and matter. So within the universe, we have one essence. Beyond that, there's God, and God can pervade this existence of the universe, and he can create, and he is in control, right? So Christian view, the Judeo-Christian view of God and existence is totally different from that of Hinduism. And so what happened with Hinduism is also they believe in the Maya. So we'll come back to this. I think we need to get going. So the Christian teleology is that the divine creation was created by God. The universe and humans were created by God with purpose and order. And that this implies, because God is a God of law and order, that there are natural laws and phenomena have to be were designed by a divine, intelligent creator. And there is, so science is a way to explore and understand God's creation, to reveal the intricacy and the order that God has embedded in the universe. And then there is harmony of faith and reason. Christians see no conflict between faith and reason, viewing them as complementary ways of understanding the truth. And rational inquiry is permitted in the Christian worldview because there's a belief that God endowed humans with reason despite the fall. Now, the fall has made our reason prone to error. But even then, the reason it was given by God, and it encourages the pursuit of knowledge through scientific inquiry. And so what is the purpose? Well, stewardship. Humans are seen as stewards of creation. And then there's ethics. The scientific practices should align with Christian ethics, ensuring that discoveries are used to promote life and dignity and justice. And we can see that in history, the scientific revolution happened in Christendom, and where all the early scientists were Christians who believed that understanding the natural world was a way to glorify God. And they discovered God's handiwork in nature. And then they used the scientific technologies, the technologies that they derived for the Great Commission and for the stewardship of the world. And there's a couple of other things that are very important. The will of God is to create his kingdom on earth as it is in heaven. And that is the concept of the New Jerusalem. So this is eschatological. We'll come back to that later. But also there's the concept of reversing the curse of Eden. So science is a way that God has given us to reverse the effects of the curse. Okay, so what is the chief end of man? Those who are from the Reformed background, they know the catechism, such as the Westminster Catechism, the Baptist Catechism, and so on. And so the first one is really important, and that is, what is the chief end of man? What is the chief purpose of man? And the chief purpose of man is to glorify God and to enjoy him forever. That is the purpose of man, is to glorify God on earth and to enjoy him forever on earth as it is in heaven. We will be enjoying God there also. And so while we are on earth, we are glorifying God. And so science is a way to glorify God. And we also glorify God through service to our fellow human beings, such as medicine and technologies for making life better. So what is the will of God? The will of God is to make the kingdom of God on earth as it is in heaven. We read that in the Lord's Prayer. Your kingdom come, your will be done on earth as it is in heaven. For yours is the kingdom and the power and the glory forever. So the God of the Bible is the only God who wants to commune with man and make every man a temple so that God dwells in the heart of man. So each of us is a temple of God and God dwells in us. And that is unique. There is no other God like that. And so this is actually a driving force for science. And I want to say that the Great Commission, or the first mandate, the Genesis mandate of Genesis 1, 26 to 31, is very similar to Genesis 9, the mandate given to Noah and family. And that is very similar to Matthew 28, the Great Commission, and the same Great Commission as mentioned by Mark in Mark 16. If you look at the structure, who is the speaker? The speaker is God, Jesus, the God, right, in the New Testament. And who is he talking to? He's talking to man, Adam or Noah and family, or to the disciples. And the image of God is shown in all of them. So we can see in Matthew, in the New Testament, the image of God in the church and the bride of Christ. And then the authority of God is shown in Genesis 1. God is the creator of heavens and earth, and the earth. And in Genesis 9, we see that God is the one who destroyed the earth in the flood and saved the family of Noah. And in Matthew 28 and Mark, we see the authority of God in Jesus when he says, all authority in heaven and on earth has been given to me. And then we see the water is mentioned in both places. There's a baptism. And so in Genesis 1 and Genesis 9, we see the baptism of the earth, right? because man came from earth, and so on. And then what about the dominion? The dominion is be fruitful and multiply, fill the earth, subdue it, and have dominion. It is the dominion over the earth, not over each other. So that dominion mandate is repeated to Noah, and it is repeated by Jesus. How will we fulfill the Genesis 1 mandate? By making disciples of all nations, baptizing them and turning them into great nations. So by preaching and baptizing them into the Christian gospel, the Christian worldview, the Christian theology, you make their nations great, because the individuals will change their government, change their culture, change their art, change everything about their nation as Christianity spreads and transforms the thought of human beings. And so the purpose of science is this, the Great Commission, which is the same as the Genesis mandate. And I'm going to go quickly over this. We'll come back to this. Now, let's talk about reversing the curse. So the curse, by the way, God curses the serpent, and then he makes, he talks to the woman. So he doesn't really call it a curse, but he says to the woman, you will have sorrow and you will have genderal problems, right? So between the male and the females. Okay, so we'll not get into that now. But notice, he doesn't really curse man. He curses the serpent. Who does he curse next? He curses the ground. It's an environmental curse. It's a curse on the ground. And what is that? The ground is cursed for your sake. In toil you shall eat of it all the days of your life. Both thorns and thistles it shall bring forth for you, and you shall eat the herb of the field. So agriculture is much more difficult now because of thorns and thistles and the non-cooperation of the animal kingdom because of the curse. And so you need science for that. Now remember that Jesus, so he puts the thorns on his head. So the curse Jesus has taken on himself. The pain that the woman is suffering, he suffered also. Well, not in childbirth, but that severe pain Jesus took on himself. And Jesus crushed the head of the serpent on the cross. And so there is goodness in the sweat and labor that actually sanctifies you. It creates character and builds character when you labor, and so there is it doesn't bring you to salvation, but it brings you to a better character, to understand God's law and God's love. So there's also the effect of the curse on the animals. But now the concept of reversing the curse is a Christian idea that has been around for 2,000 years. So when this is nothing new. It might seem like outrageous today to say that we're going to reverse the curse. Actually, this has been around in Christendom for 2,000 years. And so when we look at science, such as agriculture, it is reversing the impact of the curse on the ground, right? Environmental sciences, those efforts in conservation, renewable energy, sustainability, and so on. It is reversing the impact of the curse. Medicine is making, and healthcare is removing, reversing the impact of the curse, or the pain and the suffering that came because of the fall. And then social progress through education, and then the teaching of equality and human rights. So social progress, Christian social progress, not the way the pagans are doing it. This is a reversal of the curse. Now, again, here's another point. The tree of life, right, was denied to Adam and Eve. They were thrown out of the garden. And God, what happens to the tree of life? Well, Jesus is the tree of life. And then he said that the living waters will now flow out of you. So every Christian is now a tree of life. You are a franchisee of this tree of life. So we can bring life to others through the gospel. So the idea of the gospel is to decentralize the tree of life and to democratize the tree of life. So you see that we have to look at the gospel in a whole amazing new way. Okay, so when you wear glasses to overcome vision problems, that is reversing the curse. Healing is reversing the curse. Computers are reversing the curse on memory and mental capacity. Machines make the life easier. Air conditioning removes the sweat of the brow on Adam's face. Technology is reversing the curse. So here is a proper teleology for science, right? This reversing of the curse, as well as the Great Commission. So this has been reversing the curse has been written by modern writers such as N.T. Wright and John Walton, Alistair McGrath, C.S. Lewis, and even biologos. Biologos are theistic evolutionists, but they talk about the regeneration, restoration. Now, here is an example, okay? Here's an example of reversing the curse. Here's a paper from 2004, and it's called Reversing the Curse, Agricultural Millennialism at the Illinois Industrial University. So the Illinois Industrial University is the forerunner for the University of Illinois, such as the one, University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign, which is a very highly rated school, college, university. And so prior to that, University of Illinois, it was called as Illinois Industrial University. As you know, all the major universities in the United States were created by Christians, including the University of Illinois. And so what the hope of the, look at this statement, the hope of the trustees of the University of Illinois and the faculty, by the way, this is from 1868. It was founded in 1868, is that the institution will produce men of Christian culture, able and willing to lend a helping hand in all the great practical enterprises of this most practical age. Because this is this is the peak era of the Industrial Revolution, right? And so they're saying, we want Christian men to be able and willing to use the technology for advancing, well, let's say the kingdom. And so one of their goals was nothing less than reversing the curse of Adam as found in Genesis 3:17-19. But now, by God's grace, the divinely ordained, well, let me read before. Humankind, they believed, had toiled miserably for their sustenance since time immemorial. But now, by God's grace, the divinely ordained dignity of farming as covenantal co-laboring with God. Listen to that. Farming is covenantal co-laboring with God. Unless God builds the house, you labor in vain. Unless God farms the farm, you are laboring in vain as a farmer. So God is the one causing plants to grow and the soil to produce. So you're as a farmer, you're engaging in covenantal co-laboring with God. Would be restored. Empirical science would enable humankind to feed themselves and their neighbors more efficiently, while granting them intellectual stimulation, physical exercise, and spiritual benefit at the same time. By putting their hands to the plow of agricultural education, they believe the Lord will usher in nothing less than a millennium of labor. You see the eschatological thinking there, that the new millennium will be a millennium of labor where you're applying technology to improve productivity and reduce suffering. You see that this is Christian thinking. This is Christian, positive, optimistic, victorious thinking. Whereas today we are anti-intellectual, retreatist, and defeatist. That is what Christians have become. And because we see that. And so they called it the millennium of labor, which was a concept invented by Reverend Jonathan Baldwin Turner, the movement's most influential and visionary theologian. And he said, God himself made the first Adam a gardener or farmer and kept him and he kept him so as a farmer till he fell from his high state. So till Adam fell, he was a farmer and a gardener. And the second Adam, Jesus, sent to repair the ruin of his fall, he made a poor mechanic called the son of a carpenter. So Jesus came as a poor mechanic, was a carpenter and a son of a carpenter. So that's how the second Adam came into this world. And he chose all his personal followers from the same humble class. So the God of the universe became a humble carpenter, and he chose fellow laborers and from the same humble class. And deity has pronounced his opinion on the dignity and value of these pursuits by the repeated acts of his wisdom and grace, as well as by the inflexible laws of his providence, compelling industrial labor as the only means of preserving health of body, vigor, purity of mind, and even life itself. So what he's saying is that labor is good, not in the way we see today, in the communist way of labor or slavery. No, labor that is working hard with your hands and sweating. It brings health of body, it brings vigor, purity of mind, and life. And so labor was exemplified. It was given dignity. Today in India or in other places, there are people who don't want to labor. They think it is beneath them to do some hard work. They think certain classes of labor are not dignified. Whereas the Reformation brought back the idea that all work is for God. You work for God. So there's dignity in labor. And so labor and learning, this is reflected in their charter. Okay, I need to move on. You can see another one, the crest of Harvard University, and the 3 books. This is in their crest. It's one book is the book of the Bible. So it says Veritas, truth. One book of the Bible, one book of the nature, the work of God in nature. And then one book, which is shown here upside down, which is human reason, and that human reason can only be turned right side around by the Holy Spirit. And so that's why this last book was turned upside down initially. Then the humanists turned it back up. And so it's called Christo et Ecclesia, Truth for Christ and His Church. So this is what was the thinking behind the setting up of Harvard Seminary that later became Harvard University. So we'll go quickly through this and come back to that later. So now, once you understand teleology, now you realize why a majority of Nobel Prize winners were Christians. Why is it that these other religions, including atheists, have contributed so little to the progress of applied science, of science and applied science? You see why teleology matters. Here's where we see it in application. And this is from before, this is from 2000. So the first 100 years of the Nobel Prizes, 65% were Christians. Now, what is surprising is Jews. Why are the Jews, even though they are a very small ethnic group, why are they so productive? Well, they do have some biblical principles. And where are they being productive? They are being productive in Christendom. They could be productive in a Christian milieu. And all these atheists who are productive, they're being productive in a Christian milieu. And apart from a few of these Buddhists, Muslims, and Shintoists, most of them are productive because of the legacy of Christendom. And so we see this glaring example of the teleology in application, the teleology for science. But after 2000, we are seeing a reduction in the number of Christians because Christians are retreating. We as Christians need to push further on. We need to encourage our young people to get into science and to take the realm of science for God, because the others will misuse it. And okay, so what is truth? So now I want to talk about epistemology, that is the study of knowledge, but you cannot separate it from the ethics. Now, Pontius Pilate, he responded to Jesus Christ. When Jesus said that he is the truth, Jesus said, Pontius Pilate said, "What is the truth?" So he's asking, even though I see that you are innocent, Mr. Jesus, I decide what is truth or false. I decide if you will live or die. I decide if you're innocent or guilty. Even though I know for sure from the evidence that you are innocent. So I decide what is truth. So this is a state of science today, that it has fallen into the hands of pagans without, that includes atheists, without morals. They have relative morals, and so they get to decide and tell others what truth is. And we see this glaringly in the last few years, including the COVID pandemic. We see the lies that were spread by WHO and people from the tops of the governments, that they decided what is truth. Now, what Christianity teaches is that truth has become flesh. Truth is now personified in Jesus Christ. And so this idea that you can know the truth as a human being, you're not like the animals, like monkeys, you can know the truth. Your brain is made differently. It is made magnificently by God so that you can know the truth. You're not just matter, you have a soul, a mind and a soul. And that soul engages with the Spirit of God. And so you can know the truth. This is revolutionary thinking to somebody from, who's grown in paganism all their lives. They cannot think this way. So this is revolutionary thinking. We read this over all the time and we don't think twice because we have become glazed by this. What is the word? Familiarity breeds contempt. So we don't take this seriously anymore. So we as Christians need to take this seriously, and we need to teach this in every area of life. So here's the ethics for the pursuit of science. The Spirit of truth, the Holy Spirit, has come. He will guide you into all truth, for he will not speak of his own authority, but whatever he hears, he will speak, and he will tell you things to come. So the Holy Spirit will guide you in science and the ethics for the pursuit of science. He who does the truth comes to the light. But he who does the truth comes to the light, that his deeds may be clearly seen, that they have been done in God. Apply this in science and in philosophy. So, is truth based on human authority figures? Is something true because the government says so, or because your local tyrant says so? Imagine living in North Korea. What is true? Is it because of Kim Jong-un saying so, or because you saw something with your senses and reason? Can you decide if that is true or not? No, you can't. Now truth is in the hands of pagans, and we need to take that realm back for Christ, bring it in submission to Jesus Christ. And okay, well, I think I don't have a clock with me, so
Yeah,
what?
I think we're exceeded time, Doctor. If you can
We've already exceeded time.
wrap
Okay,
it. Yeah. Sorry about that.
so let's stop and take questions.
Sure.
Um,
I think
yeah.
thank you, Doctor, so much. And I think I've learned a lot in terms of, I think the main takeaway for me is like pursue science. Don't stay away from it as a Christian. There might seem like that there are heavy contradictions and of course falsehood being said and spread in the different viewpoints, and also that there might be definitely chances and exploratory of Christians to enter into the field a lot more than we are currently in this current generation. So thank you for that, and also about very interesting perspectives on Buddhism and some of the other religious as well as secular concepts. So thank you for that. We are already over time by almost 15-20 minutes. So if there's somebody in the group, please do. I think there's a question from Mr. Sujan Paul on eschatology. So if there's maybe a couple of questions in the next 10 minutes we could have, and then we will have to wind up. So if there's somebody in the audience who has some questions based on what we've heard or something else related to the topic, you may unmute and speak up. Sister Preeti, do you have a question?
No, sorry.
Okay. Mr. Sujan Paul, did you still have the question, or was it answered by Dr. Panicker in his talk?
Yeah, good evening. I've already posted my question in the group. That was with respect to the poster that I've seen mainly, but the subject looks like the subject deviated from what we were discussing, and it has gone on a different track. So do you
Yeah, I think your
see
question in the previous topic, if we can address that for you.
No, I think that in a way he
yeah.
has not touched upon, Panicker has not touched upon eschatology. I believe there
don't
is
have time,
no
yeah.
point. There is no point discussing that question now. So on a follow-up meeting or something, if Panicker talks about eschatology, then that may be the correct time to
Sounds good.
take up that question. But with respect to the science subject that I have said, I put a question on the WhatsApp group. Just mainly to see, I was not at all comfortable with the statement or that quote from that gentleman, Francis or somebody. He was saying that if you have less knowledge on science, you're very likely that you may go away from God or move away from God. That is exactly the opposite of what Bible talks about. Bible talks about the more of this world, you are more going to be away from God. So if Philip Panicker can explain how we can line up with that quote, then that would be helpful.
Well, I don't remember the quote exactly, but
the quote says, a little science can change a man from God. A lot of science will bring him back.
Okay.
And science, I believe, is exactly what Bible says of knowledge of this world. Or do we have a different? Do we have a different definition for science?
So now the problem is that today there's a lot of Gnosticism that has crept into Christian thinking. And Gnosticism was a cultish group that spread in the Greco-Roman world in the 200s and 300s. And they're still around, but they largely died out because of Christian influence. But they taught that this world is evil, the body is evil, and we should, the spiritual is good, right? Whereas the Christian thinking is that this world was created good by God. And we fell and God cursed the world. But it's not evil. It can be redeemed. And so what he is saying is that when you learn about God's handiwork, because science is knowledge about God's creation, when you have a limited knowledge, you might not see God. You might see things like bad design. These are some of the very common arguments used by atheists, evolutionists against God. They say that the human body is badly designed, or certain animals are designed badly. And that is because of ignorance. Once they study deeper, they realize that even the most simplest life form is very complex, and that it is impossible, even statistically impossible, right? Because we know it is outright impossible, but if you want to quantify it, we can use statistics. It is statistically impossible for life to arise out of non-life, and for the various life forms that we have to come out of nothingness through random process. So the atheist arguments are nullified. They are rejected through scientific arguments. So the more we study science, we see God's handiwork in nature, in every part of nature. And so that should lead you back to God. That's what the meaning of the quote is. So this world is not evil. This world is still, it's fallen, and it is being redeemed by Christ. That is the message of the gospel. This world is being redeemed by Christ, not just the human beings, but this world also is being redeemed. All creation groans for the appearance of the children of God. So that's.
Do we believe in justification, sanctification, and glorification? Is that the
Yes.
same standard we have? Yeah, okay. So if that's the case, a born again experience is why are we born again? Why do we need to be transformed? To eternally live in this world or for something else?
So, okay. So this is why eschatology is important, because some eschatology teaches.
We don't need to go to eschatology. Very simple.
No, that is wrong thinking. That is wrong thinking. The Christian.
I'm asking. No, I'm
Yes.
asking. What is the idea? What is the reason for one being born again?
Yeah. So the Christian message is a very comprehensive message. It has soteriology. It has about the study of salvation. It has the different aspects of theology. You have to take it all together. You cannot separate them and just talk about salvation without the rest of the message, because the reason for salvation is explained in the rest of the messages. So eschatology is part of the Christian message. So you need to understand why salvation is necessary, even from the eschatological perspective. So you cannot just study theology with just one subject, that is salvation. So the purpose of salvation.
Yeah, understood. We just said justifying is being justified from the punishment of sin, and okay, sanctification, of course, we agreed saying that it is getting sanctified day by day, and glorification. So what is glorification? Is it for this world, or you are glorified into a new realm?
Yeah, glorification is when you die. You get a new body,
When you die,
a glorified body.
Where are we? Glorified body, where are we going?
Okay, so this is why eschatology is important, because some eschatologies tell you that there's going to be a brand new earth created, and it looks like a spaceship that is explained in Revelation 21, a spaceship coming out of the sky. That is a spiritual explanation. So some eschatologies say we're going to live on that spaceship, New Jerusalem. But a proper reading of the Bible says that this world will be recreated, and the heavens will take over this world. It'll be transformed. And so we will live here with a new body. So there are different aspects of eschatology. I would advise you, we don't have time to go over all of these aspects. So please look into all the different types of eschatologies. So you can look into amill, premill, and postmill. Just check them out and see what they explain about the afterlife. So it's the simple answer is that the world will be renewed and we'll have a glorified body. We will live with God, and we'll have a new existence that we haven't imagined yet. We cannot yet imagine.
Okay, till this earth is being renewed, we are in some other place.
I'm sorry, it broke up.
Till the earth is getting renewed, are we in some other place? If the people who have died for the last.
Oh yeah. Yeah, they're in heaven in the presence of Jesus. So it's like, it's like how Jesus talked to about the rich man and Lazarus. So those who are Christians, now there is, Abraham is now with Jesus, right? Before Jesus was crucified, there was, where Abraham was and where the sinners were. And that's what we call Hades, not hell. So Hades, sometimes Hades is translated as hell, but that part of Abraham's lap, as they call it, is gone, because all who are Christians, all who are believers before Christ, are now in the presence of Christ, out of body in the presence of Christ. And so they are now in their spirit in the presence of Christ in heaven. The sinners are in a separate place. They are waiting for the judgment day. And but those who are believers are in the presence of Jesus.
All right. Dr. Panicker, thank you so much for your very detailed, in-depth, I think we'll look into how these evolution of many of these have come about, and also how I like the way that you urged us to get into science and to lean into the creator, right? So he is our creator, and he is the one that has made the heaven and earth. And as David says, may all creation praise the Lord. And the way that David admires nature is something that has always fascinated my heart. And I honestly think Solomon got his fascination of and the expertise and the wisdom into biology and zoology and so many other fields that he got into with his fathers, and of course his own interests, and of course his own blessing from the Lord. So I think I loved it. I love the training, and as well as the preaching that we've had today, and also the different discussions on the topic of eschatology that we didn't essentially get into, but good to know that there are many perspectives on this. And also we would in a future date perhaps try to either make a video or try to have further sessions with you on this. But thank you so much for being on the call, and also for those on the call. I hope this has been a time of getting deeper into an aspect of life that is very important, because we do engage with the world of the Great Commission, and it's important for us to know how and where the truth is placed, and how to use the truth in the right way, and not just hold it up as a weapon, but to hold it up with the knowledge of what God has made and what God has made us to be, and also what he wants us to explore and find the secrets of God, and find the secrets in this earth that he has placed and planted. So I wish you all a very good night.
If you have 1 minute.
Yeah.
Thank you very much for that, Christina. There was a question in the chat that science, I don't think the knowledge of this world is science. Well, that's true. But science just means knowledge. And so the knowledge of this world and of life and of this existence and of the Bible, those are all what we call the body of knowledge. God is calling us to expand the body of knowledge, and including what we call modern science. So modern science is part of that body of knowledge God wants us to expand. So it's not the only knowledge of this world.
I think there was a response to another comment stating that this is the foolishness of the world, Dr. Panicker. I think maybe we can take it offline, but yeah. So.
And yeah, so what you said also, that there are many views of eschatology. This is also new to a lot of people, even to me. A few years back, about 10 years ago, I didn't know that there were other views of eschatology. So I want all of you to explore eschatology and pick an optimistic, victorious one where Jesus is victorious. So that's my message to everyone.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you so much for concluding this. And I thanks everybody that has attended. I hope you continue these discussions in your homes and in your church communities as well.
All right. Thank you for the opportunity.
Bye,
and thanks
everyone.
for listening, everybody. God bless.